So it's a pleasure to have you here. I guess whatever we're discussing today and tomorrow are of wider interest in European Union, I guess. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much for being with us.
Eucharisto Kalimera, and I really wish that my Greek expanded a little bit more than that, because I've been listening to the speeches this morning and really wishing that I could understand a little bit more from my predecessors. But thank you very much for inviting me this morning to this really important two-day conference. It's a very important moment to discuss the potential of healthcare in this indeed fourth revolution, and a moment to take stock after the COVID pandemic, in the situation of crisis that Europe finds itself now with the war in Ukraine, to see how we can build back better and smarter for our patients and our healthcare systems. As EFPIA, what I would like to give today as a focus is really the data and digital elements of building back better, because I believe that the COVID crisis has really taught us the power of data and digital, and how we can become more effective and impactful for patients, but also for every element of the healthcare system, if we can harness the digital revolution that we are witnessing at the moment. I'm afraid I don't see my slides. Oh, there they are. Thank you very much. If you would be so kind as to go to the next slide for me. Thank you. So these really, for us at EFPIA, the European Federation of Pharma Industries and Associations, are the elements of how to realize that fourth revolution in healthcare. Every element is crucial, and we believe that to engage better and to manage better our health system, we need to make sure that health professionals can make better and faster decisions about patient care through the use of digitals. Payers can allocate resources more efficiently, also using some of the latest technologies and information gathered from the digital revolution. And innovators can deliver treatments that meet people's needs and generate value across the system by really harnessing the information they receive from the outcomes and that treatments today give to patients. And finally, health systems can monitor, learn, and then adapt to make themselves more health resilient. Of course, healthcare systems have suffered a lot during COVID in every single country. The current economic situation is extremely complex, so we really need to learn how to do more and better with what we have. And in this sense, technological revolutions like the one we have in the pharmaceutical side, but also in the digital side, should definitely be built upon to reach that goal. If we go to the next slide, I'd like to just share with you how the data across the life cycle of medicines can really fuel innovation and support healthcare. For us, of course, as innovators, I represent the innovative pharmaceutical industry. Access to data is extremely critical at every step, from accelerating drug discovery, but also to understanding patients' behaviors, to treatments and outcomes. So the availability of high quality and accurate data is really essential to test hypotheses and identify trends and assess values. The digital transformation, we really feel, can optimize medicine development. And this is what we're all aiming for. And it does so by really enhancing the knowledge about the disease progression, so at the basis, but also assisting in identifying the patients that can benefit from the proposed treatment the most, so getting this sort of personalized approach, or more personalized approach, modernizing the clinical trial conduct. And we really noticed during COVID how important it was to be able to have remote clinical trials and to assist patients even if they weren't able to come to the hospitals to do their clinical trials. And then fostering direct participation of patients in medicine development, and finally monitoring the medicine effectiveness after approval. So this for us is really the way digital transformation can optimize medicine development. And I can imagine that what's written there is rather small, so you'll be able to find that also on our website. But the overarching benefit is in terms of the improvement of health outcomes, which is really, I think, what everybody in the room, I'm sure, and online has as an objective, to get the best outcomes for patients and at the same time get the most resilient and sustainable healthcare for the system. So for us, really, digital transformation is that pillar to increase the innovation productivity of the EU economy, and also ensure that Europe remains an innovator and world leader in the development and manufacturing of medicines, supporting faster access. So we really believe it is a key, essential element of this fourth revolution in healthcare. If we could go to the next slide, how is EFPIA then involved in making sure we can support this digital revolution in healthcare? We are doing so by partnering with all healthcare players that you can see there on the wheel to define new ways of working together and finding solutions to the most pressing needs that will ultimately improve population health. So we need to really ensure that if we want to be effective, that every element, every aspect of the system is digitally enabled. Maybe this is one way of saying it. This means that we need to work with policymakers and regulatory agencies and healthcare providers to make sure that we all have an infrastructure and the data security framework, and last but not least, the mindset that is needed to capitalize on the opportunities that lie before us. I think one of the most shocking things that we all witnessed at the beginning of COVID is that we were not even able to quantify the number of deaths at the beginning because the different systems in the different countries were not able to communicate with each other. They were not compatible. That is the worst case scenario. I think here we're aiming for the best case scenario in a revolution, and we're trying to make sure that we align all those players with the capacity to make the best use of the digital transformation. This is something that EFPIA is very actively involved in doing at European level, and then through the associations in different countries such as Greece as well. What are the challenges to realize this potential? On the next slide, they won't surprise you. So as with many things, fragmentation is always a challenge of getting something right. So in this particular space, interoperability, so what I was mentioning before, when you are not able to collect data and compare it, when the data is not interoperable and you can't even assess the number of deaths, for example, during COVID correctly, then it makes it very difficult to have a successful outcome. And underlying these, I would say, a lack of incentives and complex regulation can also be obstacles to realizing the potential of the digital revolution in healthcare. Data collection systems are often not interoperable. They can't talk to each other, not only between countries, but sometimes within the same country. I know that that's the case in Belgium when I go to different hospitals. Sometimes they have my data, sometimes they don't have my data. And in that sense, it's extremely important that the quality and the interoperability is ensured. There is a lack of suitable infrastructure and a suitable legislative framework to be able to share that data, especially cross-border and on an EU level. But more fundamentally, I think the bodies that own or control the data are currently not really incentivized to share the data. And the relevant data sharing regulations are ambiguous at best or inhibitory at worst. So they make it really not very attractive to share that data. So there are, for example, variable interpretations of the EU General Data Protection Regulation, the so-called GDPR, and that results in different regulatory environments, some that foster digital healthcare, like Estonia, for example, is a country where digital healthcare has certainly taken off, and others where there are bigger barriers, such as in Germany with a different interpretation. So this is often the case with European legislation. We need to make sure that its interpretation is as harmonious as possible, especially in areas where we want things to be interoperable. If I look at the next slide, the big word data governance, this is the big issue. The data, of course, belongs to patients, comes from patients. So it's very important that it is as open as possible, but also as closed as necessary. These are the big principles for us. The overarching principles should be people's centricity and societal benefits. So you can see those first two boxes there. Citizens should own and control their own data, and health actors are then incentivized to improve health outcomes so that data sharing will be normalized. I think the European GDPR legislation that I just mentioned before already provides the governance framework but implementations and mechanisms are lacking and sometimes confusing between member states. So it's extremely important that citizens have access to their data and remain in control of it. They must be free to choose the purposes for which their data are used, and the potential recipients of that healthcare data in healthcare and research should be authorized to receive that data, and that authorizations should be reviewed regularly. I think these are important building. I think if I maybe forgot one main word on this slide, it would be trust. Trust is so central to this digital revolution actually taking place in the right way and enabling everything. I think the other two elements are that the governance framework should support the use of data for research and policy-making purposes, so the so-called secondary use, as well as for healthcare primary use, so for those involved in looking after the patient. Clarifying and harmonizing the rules in this regard is very necessary. We're not there yet, and we believe that the data governance requirements should be proportionate to the risk associated with the intended use of the data. Always difficult, of course, but this is all new. This is also a revolution in itself. But in that sense, we really need to make sure that the guiding principles underlying the European Open Science Cloud are really that data should be as open as possible and as close as necessary, and be fair, which is a nice acronym for findable, accessible, interoperable, and usable. I wanted to say just one word about artificial intelligence on the next slide, because I think it's, these are the partners that we are working with in order to drive the change. You may recognize some of them. Some of them have actually been set up as part of the Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is the public-private partnership between EFPIA and the European Commission. So data saves lives. And yes, I've nearly finished my presentation. Thank you. I only have one more slide. I just got a little message in my chat. My last slide is in fact on artificial intelligence. So if you could kindly move to the next slide. Based on the objective of the European Commission that you can see summarized there by Stella Kyriakides, so the Health Commissioner, we really want to make sure that digital tools significantly improve the capacity and efficiency of healthcare systems. I think the industry is completely aligned with the European Commission in this sense, and working very much hand in hand for that. I then will pass on to the next slide, which are just the final objectives, if you like. We need to make the EU single market for data converge, and this needs to happen during as well the pharmaceutical strategy for Europe, which is currently being implemented at European level. We are shaping our vision for the future of health and digital ecosystems, and it's really now the time to create and contribute to those long-term benefits. So there are some steps that need to be taken. I think the most important things are to make sure we future-proof our legislation that fosters innovation, increases attractiveness. We create those partnerships that increase trust in data, sharing and use, and then that we also invest in digital infrastructures to ensure scalability and usability. I think the European health data space will enable exchange of data across the full continuum of care if we very much all participate and make sure we break down any barriers that we see. So thank you very much for giving me the floor, inviting me to your conference, and I wish you an excellent two-day conference. And as I said, I wish I was there and able to speak Greek as well. That would make it easier for me. Thank you very much.